I mean, didn't the messenger look like Darth Vader, for God's sake? It had like, a big breathing apparatus around his face. And I'm like, these are the people you want to mess with? Okay.
Yeah, it's like, wait, he came in the nobility carriage, everybody in the town is buzzing about it, and your first reaction is, I'm going to go spy on these people because it's an opportunity. Like,
turning down a very fun night. With the girls
yeah.
In the distant future, vampires rule the night, but their numbers are dwindling. One podcast is unlike all the others. Half human, half vampire. This is Lefty Speaks, the official podcast for Vampire Hunter D.
So, Ray follows the plan, kidnaps Dan. He's gonna lure D out, use the time-bewitching incense candle to kill D. But Greco's stolen the candle and D cuts off his arm. And you then have D and Dan just like looking down at Greco literally and figuratively, and D's making snide comments to him of, maybe you should have rethought your life choices, sir. And Ray's crying on the ground about, what happened? It must have been switched. Why are you talking down to me? This is terrible. My life sucks. And he's like, well, you made choices. And to me, it touches on one of the things that I love about the Vampire Hunter D franchise, that it's about personal choice. You de-exemplifies, I choose to live a certain way. I'm not going to ever bite a human. I'm not going to wantonly, murder people. And I am not going to make more mixed blood children. But throughout the series, de-exemplifies, it doesn't matter how the world comes at you. I choose how I respond. The importance of personal choice, of choosing, I'm going to follow the ethical, path I've picked for myself, and I'm going to stick to it. And I love that this is a moment where Dee's telling another character, perhaps you should have reflected sooner on the choices you were making. And it's, feels like a light-hearted bit that doesn't feel like it's trying to, bash that over your head. I like the subtlety of it in this moment. And of course, Ray doesn't want to hear it. I mean, who would at that point? His kidnap murder plot just failed and he got his hand cut off.
Yeah.
It could be a good time for reflection. Your murder kidnap plot just failed and you lost a hand. Oops. But out of that, we get to Doris, who's waiting for Dan's rescue. Just sitting on the couch praying, and the doctor shows up. Her grandfather figure. Tells her a story of, I've discovered something. We can all be safe. Come with me, I need to show it to you. So of course she trusts him, they hitch up the wagon, and they take off. And lo and behold, Larmika's waiting for them. And she's like, wait, we're trapped. And the doctor reveals the true colors as he snatches the necklace off of Doris and reveals, nope, he'd gotten bit. He's a minion now. He's been turned into a pawn. And I love the bit of dialogue where he's talking about this girl I saw, just yesterday as my granddaughter. I cared about. Now all I see is this delectable body I can sink my, fangs into. My eyes have been opened. I don't know about opened in a good way.
Yeah.
But, I think it showed really quickly what happens when an individual is forcefully converted to the side of the vampires. Like, you completely get rewritten. You're no longer you. You don't have any agency anymore. You're now a thing to just be used. And quite clearly discarded, because Larmica just stabs him in the back and tosses him off the side of the cliff. Hey, you did your job. You got her here. You removed the cross. I don't need you anymore. Bye-bye.
Yeah. And that social commentary, I mean, is very common throughout all of Kikuchi's works, but especially Vampire Hunter D. Making personal choices, various ways that people can lose sight of their own morality. People, like power corrupts, money corrupts, and then even, because vampires have such a long life, you can see how it evolves over time and gets ingrained systemically into systems, and into different belief systems. So yeah, it's really cool. And what I love about it is it's not beating you over the head with it. It's part of an organic explanation, or you see it, and it's not preached. It's just there, and a part of that world. But you see it, and the comparisons are definitely intentional so that way it can play out in each episode.
Going from that, Larmica confronts Doris, and I think it does a good job showing her that she's not, I would say, fully evil. She doesn't want to harm Doris. She just doesn't want Doris becoming part of their family. So here she makes it clear of like, I just want you away. I don't care how that happens. If I have to kill you, so be it. If you, go away on your own volition to where, my father loses interest in you, great. And I like that moment where, for Larmica, she's shown that she's, again, not just some two-dimensional bloodsucker. She has a goal she sees as defending the purity of her family. And what matters to her is that goal gets accomplished, not necessarily murdering or playing with humans. She just sees them as beneath her. And that is another layer to this story that I like. You could have made her just this complete caricature, two-dimensional minor villain, but she got nuance written into her. And that's something I enjoy seeing subtly crafted in with writing. Go that extra step. That it's these little details to me, that polish, that keep it interesting. Of why would I want to watch this again? Mm-hmm. Well, it's got those little layers built into it. It's like, if somebody makes an outfit or a costume, but it's missing all the accents and, if you will, the frills and the going back to dating myself, the flair. That's part of what makes it fun, for me at least. And, from that, of their moment of Larmica trying to show a bit of mercy, of I just need to accomplish my goal, we have Greco coming in with his brilliant plan. Like, aha! I've got it. I've got the candle. I'm going to blackmail the Count. Whether it's with you or your corpse of his daughter, I've got this. I'm going to be king of the world because the Count's going to do what I want because I've got blackmail on him. Again, brilliantly thought out. Only for him to get shot and knocked off the cliff by Dan. And I love the fact that it's to me, I felt that was kind of a comical end to, Greco's kidnapping, blackmail plot. Oops. Who would have thought that, when you disrupt the plans of the nobles by stealing the device, you leave all the people that they had planned for their trap to come interfere with yours. That very, I love the fact that how quickly it highlights that very narrow, I'm brilliant tunnel vision planning. What do you mean that happened? Inconceivable. That level of plotting.
Everyone thinks they're Batman.
Mm-hmm. Until you get punched.
Yeah.
And then, we go from there to, I love that we have D showing mercy of, well, I'm not going to just arbitrarily kill you to Larmica because, well, you haven't done anything that I know of that justifies that I need to cut you down right here and now.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you're a vampire, but you've given me no cause. I haven't been hired for you. And she's really surprised at that. And even more surprised when she's talking about how nobles should be, that he's quoting the sacred ancestors. She's like, how, you're a Dampier, how do you know who this is? How do you supposedly know more than I do? And it's shocking to her worldview. There was something I read a long time ago that I thought rang very true. We build an image of ourselves. All of us do. And whether or not that self-image is founded in reality or not, we fight to defend it when it's threatened. And we don't like it when it's challenged. And I think that's one of the things that, for humanity, that's a bit tragic, is when we have I would call it overblown or distorted image of ourselves that we've built as kind of that the core of how we see ourselves. Most people, when that gets challenged, they can't adjust well. New information, if it's too contradictory, they just break down. And I think, this is a great example of that here, of she's getting her world and perspective rattled as never before. And this is just, here, the first hint of it. But I think, he's does a great job here of, this is a vampire noble, and he's showing that example of what happens when what you thought was bedrock, solid foundation, and you're learning, no, that wasn't so solid. Your concrete is more sand and water, not concrete. And I like that he drips it out towards the end of this story. Giving Larmica kind of that stepping stone of realizing, oh, wait, everything I believed was a lie. Next scene. Yes, the temptation of D. Doris comes out of the shower. Dan's asleep. He's back in the bed. Doris comes out the shower and, just throws herself at D of, let's run away. I don't want you to go fight and die. I'm scared. Take me. And you see D's temptation. The fangs come out. He really does want to bite her. He fights that urge his whole life. And to me, I love this scene because it's a test of who he is. What does he choose? And I think for us as humanity, I think we face a lot of those choices. What do I choose to do in this moment? Do I take advantage of this other person, or do I do this unethical thing because, you know, I can get away with it? Or if I make this choice, do I want it in the moment? But is it bad for me in the long run? Am I taking the short-term gratification for long-term terrible consequences? And I think that's a very human struggle. It's something that we face every moment of every day with choices we make. And here it is personified with glowing eyes and extending vampire fangs.
Yeah. That's a really important moment. And it's a tough thing to think about from and this is where I was hoping, you know, it would be great if we had a women's perspective, you know, right now. But I feel like if you're a male of a certain age and you were given the same opportunity, there's no way most guys out there are going to like turn her down, regardless of how honorable or whatever, you know, whatever your code of ethics are. And the fact that these actual life depends on draining human life, you know, and she's offering it. It's not even like he has to take it. That's a great moment. And it's a conflict, you know, because when I saw it as a younger person, I was like, he's the stupidest man alive, or the damn Pierre alive. And then now at 50, I look at it and I'm like, wow, that's a hell of a sacrifice, you know, because that is a sacrifice. Because he could actually get away with everything. Because even if somebody came after him, those two, if they decided to take off, he would still win. So to deny yourself that connection, that love, even though it may be a one-way streak, it's a very interesting character moment, you know, and I feel like in that moment is when he actually becomes the character that you see in all the other novels. Because before that, he's still kind of an enigma. And it's very, 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 and you know, you see that in the Blade movie in 1998, you know, with Wesley Snipes' character, but he actually does bite the woman in order to rejuvenate himself. You know, so it's a very interesting thing to see when someone offers themselves to a vampire that's doing good things and the vampire turns it down. I mean, that's one of the great choices. It's almost like the choice at the end of Return of the Jedi when Luke could kill Vader and decides not to. You know, it reminds me something of that because that's a purely heroic moment where you have nothing to win really by doing the right thing. So it's a cool moment, it really is.
Outside of just doing the right thing.
Yeah, it's what does it do to shape your soul? And in my life with, you know, my family and history, my dad always pushed the study of philosophy, ethics, you know, different religions, and all, like, what does it mean to study, you know, ethics and human behavior? Why is, you know, the more I've learned about it, the more I've read, the more I believe that it's something that's essential for us to look at as humanity. Because if we don't, we go to really dark places. And one of the favorite things I read in all the different philosophy and ethic books actually came out of Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. And there's a portion of the book where he said, every choice we make is like turning a dial. And the more you turn the dial in one direction, the easier it is to keep going and the harder it is to go back the other direction. So, your ethical choices really are important because all of your choices shape who you become, who you are. They change you. And to me, I think this is a great moment of him recognizing, as much as I want this, as great as the temptation is, if I choose this, there's no going back. I've you know, it's like you're facing the idea of if I take this drug, it'll alter my body forever. Well, in the short run, I may really want the effect. But do you stop to consider what the long-term consequences of it are? And I think for me, this exemplifies that evaluation of choice in that moment. Because once you bite one human, well, now you've bitten a human. You've drank their blood. You don't get to take that back. And you know, I won't get into it, but I can think of a couple moments of like that in my life where there are moments I think I made the better choice, and moments in my life where I made the worst choice. And I think that all of us have that. It's, to me, the question is, how much do we try to reflect and learn from it? And so I'm glad that, we have stories like this to try and push us to think about those moments of short-term versus long-term.
I think that's why stuff like Star Trek, especially Star Trek and things of that nature really resonate, because Star Trek is a morality play about choices, but on a really grand scale. Whether it be the TV shows, the movies, or the novels, the cartoons, all that stuff, you always see it play out. And I'm not going to get into like the philosophy of Star Trek, but I feel that what you're saying here is one of the reasons why certain stories resonate and other ones don't. And it really does come down to mirroring our decision-making processes, for better or for worse.
And, we know the choice D made here. He takes Doris, pushes her away, and it's like, nope, we can't, we're not doing this. And from there, he's made the choice, the moment is over, and somehow we find that Greco is still alive, and he's clinging to the candle of, at least I still have the time bewitching incense. My plan isn't rude. I can still pull this off. And who finds him? Ray, who's got a wrapped, bloody stump of a hand, who's rather upset that you are the one. You did this. And so Greco finally, meets his grisly end and loses the candle because, his brilliant plan was just short.
Do they show in the movie? I don't remember them showing him dying. It's off screen, right?
Yeah, it's off screen.
I think so,
I just can't imagine, Ray with bloody stump, his blade out of, you're the reason I failed and got my hand cut off and have to crawl back to the count with no results to show for it yet again. And for Ray, as we learn, he wants results because he wants immortality and eternal youth. And that's what he's after. Which again, I'm like, why you want that whole immortality thing? I don't know, but it seems like, that's a recurring story throughout humanity of people want that idea of, I want immortality. I'm going to be the immortal emperor or whatever. And I'm like, that doesn't sound so fun. Be careful what you wish for.
Right.
After Ray promises, Greco's going to die horribly and suffer, we get back to the farm and Ray uses the candle, disables D, stakes him. They're like, well, we're going to be even. I'm cutting off your hand too. Goodbye, Lefty. Flying off. And the next scene is one that I find a little odd and interesting, where we get a shot of Larmica going, wait, is he dead? Like, do you have... So it's, again, that's kind of supernatural premonition element of, like, what are the powers of vampires? All the followers of Lee moving through the castle, like, some cult procession in robes. And that Ray has dumped Dan in the basement of the castle. He's just unconscious, lying in the sewers, the utility area. I just, I find that, like, wait, so why is he just dragged him along and dropped him? Didn't kill him.
It feels like there was something cut, clearly from the movie for pacing, and because it gets very abrupt because we start to get long in the tooth, no pun intended, around this part of the movie.
Yep, we got to get to the ending, and so we get through that, and Larmica again confronts her father, angry that he's going to bring a human in, and he moves to just finish shattering her view of herself. Her foundation of what she's built everything upon is, no, your mother was originally human, and she is the old Doris. I bit her, I turned her, she was my fun, my plaything, and you were the result of that. So to me is that place where I'm like, okay, so Lerminka isn't really a Dhampir. She was born to two vampires, but one of them was a human originally. So she is sort of a half-blood.
Mm-hmm.
Just that instead of being born to a human mother, she was born to a human-turned vampire mother. And, she's, take it back, you're lying, that can't be true. And so he just knocks her unconscious and leaves her like, you need to cool off. Well, you'll be fine in centuries, whatever. Take a nap. Just, leaves her hanging in the air, literally. I'm going to go have my fun. I'm bored. This next scene is one that I really loved. Ray comes, bows before the Count, asks for his immortality. He's sacrificed everything. His friends are dead. He lost his hand. But he delivered. Doris is there. The Count has her. The wedding is about to happen. And the Count's response? Yeah, you're lucky to be alive. You failed too much. Come back in 50 years and ask me again.
Mm-hmm. Great scene.
Yeah. And shows that perspective to the Count. 50 years, come back and ask me then. Where Ray's like, what's the point? In 50 years, I'll at best be this old, decrepit, falling apart. I need this now. Who wants eternal age? I want eternal youth.
Right.
We see, what you mentioned earlier, Interview with the Vampire. Kirsten Dunst's character, she's forever a little child.
Yep.
Well, this would, Ray's mind, it's the opposite of, I'm going to be forever old man. I don't want to live 50. Yeah, I don't want to, get my reward as an old man and have a stump. And, I want to convert now and, get a new hand and keep my power, So, yeah, here's a guy who, despite all my sacrifice, the blue blood tossed me aside. Which, as we were talking about earlier, that whole, I look down on you, peasant. You're just a servant. I don't actually have to pay you or keep my promises to you. What are you going to do about it? Especially after our conversation with Gaming Muse, looking at the history of feudal Japan. And, this is very classic to that of samurai decided, I'm going to stab you. Well, why? Because I can. What are you going to do about it? You had, people with no check on power. So what incentive did they have to be ethical other than their own moral compass? So, of course, you're going to have people that it's like, I'm going to do whatever I want. I don't care who I hurt. What are they going to do about it? And unfortunately, that's a bit of human nature. We can choose to do good or we can choose to do evil. We have that kind of freedom of choice, for better or worse. And unfortunately, there are times where we choose pretty badly.
And that's also a great juxtaposition of D, right? Where D, at almost every turn, could make the choice, as we've mentioned before, make the bad choice or, the amoral choice. And for no other reason than his own internal compass, his own integrity, his own belief system, he maintains course. It's not that anyone would catch him. It's not that anyone would stop him. The only thing that really makes him do that is himself. And that's ultimately what makes him a hero, beyond all the cool stuff that he can do. It's that mindset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, what did I choose? Did I choose to keep the right path? Did I choose to be the hero? Or did I choose the easy, quick way out that may have some poor long-term consequences?
Yeah. And also very traditional samurai ideology is you don't take pleasure in killing. So if you notice, D doesn't revel in any of the death that he causes, even ones that are extremely deserving of it. It's just something he has to do. It's not, he didn't get any weird satisfaction from that. It was just something that he had to do. Yeah.
Yeah. To me, the example, if you look at the samurai code, it was based around a lot of great qualities of honor and ethics. The problem is, it's like in the Middle Ages, the only way you had to power was to be born a noble of some capacity or climb the ranks of the church. And so you saw a lot of people join the church, not because of faith, not because of belief in God or what the Bible taught, but because it was the only way someone not born a noble could have any measure of power or influence in a lot of countries in Middle Age Europe. So what did people do? Climbed the ranks of the church and acted in horribly corrupt manner, because they weren't there for belief or faith or anything of what way it was supposed to be there. It was all about, I want power, and this is the only path to it.
Yeah. One could argue that that still happens today.
Mm-hmm.
You look at a
I'm
lot
not saying it doesn't.
A lot of politics and a lot of different organizations that are supposed to truly help people, and maybe I think we see it often where that's how things start. But then how do they end?
Yep. Like there was, I saw a story the other day of a food bank where the people running it got charged, arrested, I think, because they had taken a bunch of money and donations and supplies for feeding the needy, and they had embezzled in the millions. And it's a tragedy. It started out well. The food bank was helping a lot of people, and then somebody at the top goes, I could just divert the funds and buy myself lots of stuff. And that's another modern example of it that made me cry was BLM, Black Lives Matter. The people that founded it, who ended up taking the donations, they spent the money. They bought a bunch of Hollywood mansions with the money. And again, that movement towards equality of civil rights is something we can never stop fighting for. I think that's cornerstone of the Vampire Hunter D story is he deals with racism at all moments, at all times. Well, and then some people are like, well, we've got this great movement. Instead of what it's supposed to be for, we need mansions. As you said, throughout history, this is tragedy of human poor choice.
There's a couple of great movies, you could watch for that. Will be last year's Conclave, which explicitly deals with this topic, explicitly.
Yeah.
And then Ridley Scott's Kingdom of Heaven.
Yes.
From a few years back. It also deals with this same topic explicitly. So,
yep.
Yeah, I mean, there
Bailey
is something
and the Blacksmith.
Exactly. And I just feel that anything with human beings, you got to have some true believers somewhere. And if you don't have any true believers, that's the moment when the corruption starts. Because I think there is something to naive idealism that people, don't understand. And I think that there is something that there are people out there who do want to help the homeless, who do want to, I'm a big supporter of food banks personally, and I would hate to think that any of the things I've donated have gone into the wrong place. That would really actually enrage me quite a bit. to the point of violence. If I thought that a starving family is still starving after I've given money and food and that went to someone else. Same thing with Black Lives Matter. I mean, the majority of people I know, including myself who supported it, and still support the idea of it, are enraged that they channel those funds not into educational programs, not into anything that would help, ease the sting of injustice, but enhance their own lives. I mean, somebody once said to me, there's a God-shaped hole in our consciousness or in our psyche that we use different things to fill in. And if it's God that fills in that hole, in its purest sense, that's not a bad thing. But if that hole is corrupt and you put God in it, then you now have a justification for everything because it's what God said.
Yeah.
Whether if you believe in it or not, but if you say that's what God said, then what's the counter? So it's something very interesting to that.
I mentioned when you mentioned Kingdom of Heaven, what was the cry of the Crusades? God, glory, and gold. Well, if we're being honest, let's reverse that. It was gold.
Gold first, yes.
Gold,
yeah.
Glory, and way out here. Maybe, the idea of God and evangelism came into it. But no, the Crusades... the Crusades were about looting.
I do want to interrupt for a second and say that if you're going to watch The Kingdom of Heaven, get the director's cut.
Director's cut.
Yeah, that extra 30 minutes or whatever it's one of the best examples of how editing and how the movie can be so different with subtle changes, additions in. I mean, it really, watch one after the other, but if you're going to only watch one, get the director's cut, please.
Yeah, that seems to be a thing with Ridley Scott films. They edit out the best stuff.
What the distributor will do versus what he wanted to do.
I mean, because Blade Runner: The Final Cut, is a very different film than even the director's cut, and a completely different film from the theatrical version. So that's a great example. But anyway, moving on.
Moving on.
Thank you for listening to Lefty Speaks, the official Vampire Hunter D podcast, hosted by Brandon Easton, Neal Fischer, and Scott McLean. This podcast is created by Unified Pictures and 9 Realms. Narration by Lauren Evallen-Muller. Recording and editing by 9 Realms. Produced by Scott McLean and Ian E. Muller. Based on the works created by Hideyuki Kikuchi. Happy hunting.